Good morning. This is about my 9th day in this job, and one thing I've figured out is exactly what I campaigned on is Washington's pretty broken. I come from a business background, and in business, when you see a problem, you sit down and you stay until you get the problem resolved. And it's frustrating for me to watch our part of our government shut down. People like Coast Guard are not getting paid. Other people are not getting paid, and we're not going down the path to secure our border. What's fascinating is you talk to people up here, and almost everybody wants to secure the border. Almost everybody wants to open up government. Why can't it happen? So when I ran on some ways to how can we make the process work better. And one of them is I don't believe you should get paid if you don't have a budget. So I'm co-sponsoring Senator Braun's bill because I don't believe you ought to get paid. If other people aren't getting paid, I mean, Coast Guard's not getting paid, or other federal workers are not getting paid, we're impacting our economy, why would congressmen and women and senators get paid? I think it's very important that we are subject to the same rules as everybody else. And if you can't pass a budget, you shouldn't get paid. The other thing is, in business, what you learn is you stick around to get things done. I think we ought to stay here until we get this done. It's frustrating, but maybe that's what will be the reason that'll make this happen. Also, I've co-sponsored Senator Thune's bill to pay our Coast Guard, and hope that will happen quickly. It's the only part of our military that's not getting paid right now. We've got a big Coast Guard presence in our state. We've got a big military presence in our state. We've got about 5,000 Coast Guard members, and it's ridiculous that they're not getting paid. You sign up. I had the opportunity to serve in the Navy. You sign up to defend the freedom of this country, but you do expect to get paid so your family can you can pay the rent, pay a car payment, make sure you can put food on the table. So I hopefully that will get passed quickly. But the best would be everybody sit down and come up with a way to get government open and also secure a border. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Have you talked with any of the Coast Guard members? Have they reached out to your office? What have you heard from them specifically in terms of what they're dealing with?
Well, we've got a big Coast Guard presence. So I talk to all of our military quite a bit. We have 20 military bases and 3 unified commands. So what I would do is every 90 to 120 days meet with all of them. So I constantly reach out to them, and I think they're respectful of the process, but they know that especially it seems like those at the bottom, it impacts them the most. So it's very important to them to get paid. Yes, sir.
At this point, it doesn't seem like the behind-the-scenes talks or lack thereof are making any progress. What about bringing some test votes to the Senate and just having amendments and figuring out that way?
Well, one thing you learned as governor is you've got to work through the process. The Senate is part of it, the House is part of it, and at the state level, the governor, and in this case, the president's part of it. So the bottom line is it has to be a negotiation between the president and anybody that doesn't want to do this. I can't imagine why Speaker Pelosi would say there's not going to be any money. I mean, nobody believes that. Nobody believes that we shouldn't be securing our border. We know there's problems, and there's lots of issues with regard to immigration, but it all starts with you've got to have a secure border. Other countries have a secure border. There's nothing immoral about it. It's the right thing to do. Yes, sir.
What about this group that led by Senator Graham, among others, that wants to reopen the government predicated on the assumption that negotiations would then begin? That seems to be Mrs. Pelosi's position, which is that she won't negotiate until the government's reopened.
But she's been very clear. The problem is she's been clear there's no money. And so if you put yourself in President Trump's position, why would he go forward and say, oh sure, let's open government for 3 weeks, when he sees Nancy Pelosi saying there is not going to be a dime. So it's a legitimate issue if you believe people are going to act in good faith and have a real negotiation. But as we've watched, that's not what Nancy Pelosi's saying. She's saying zero. Yes.
Senator, you're in a unique position. You have a close relationship with the president. You are a businessman. Have you called him and talked with him about potentially going over to the White House or working with him and the White House on a group of senators here that could propose something that he might actually sign?
Yeah, I've had plenty of conversations, but here's the issue. You can't have, what the Democrats are doing is just saying no. Okay, so tell me how you have a negotiation. If I was sitting in President Trump's position, I would say, okay, so I know that they are saying absolutely zero, no, nothing. So I would stop and say, okay, what can I do without them? Because he has an obligation to keep us safe. And so what I would be doing if I was in his position, saying, what can I do? When I was a governor, when we had a crisis, I'd say, okay, I want to work with my legislative branches, but I've got to get something done. So what can I do?
Something that he could do is declare a national emergency. Do you think that that's legal, that he could do that?
I think he ought to look at it. I think he should look at every option he has. I think he should, if that's something that he can do, I think he ought to look at it. Now, the best would be to get everybody to act responsibly and say, let's open government, let's secure our border. But think about it. If you listen to what the Democrats are saying, it's not oh, what's the right dollar? It's just no. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, sir.
Senator, as you said, about a week ago, you were the most junior senator because you scored a full case.
I think the most junior.
Yeah, most junior Republican case. What do you see as your role here, and what can you do from that position, both to end the shutdown and broader in the Senate?
You know, the way I've always thought about it, and it's probably because I'm a business guy, but everybody can have an impact. And what you got to do is you've got to come up, you've got to work hard, you've got to come up with the right ideas, you've got to build the right relationships. And so that's why I've been talking to different individuals to see what can get done. The nice thing about, my experience in the last 9 days here is people are receptive to have conversation. Now it's frustrating that nothing's happened. Yes, sir.
Senator, is there any issue that for you would be worth potentially shutting the government down over? For Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, it was Obamacare in 2013. For the president now, it's the wall. I know you weren't here when the shutdown started, but is there any issue that you think is worth?
I've never thought of it that way. I didn't shut down government when I was a governor. I don't want government to be shut down. I want to build, as a governor, I want to build my economy. I want to make sure people get a job, their kids get a good education, keep them safe. So what I try to do is figure out how I got the things I believed in, but I never wanted to shut down government.
What would you say to TSA agents or other folks, who, if they went on strike, could cripple the nation's
Well, first off, my heart goes out to them because I'm sure, some of them might have savings, but some of them don't. And some of them are probably worried about, how they pay the car payment or pay the mortgage or pay the rent. I'm sure they're worried about that. So what I would say is everybody up here has to look at people like that and say, why would we be doing this when we all agree we have to have border security and we all agree we ought to open up government? Why can't the Democrats come to the table and say, we know we have to do this? Why? It just seems like it's a political game rather than act in the best interest of the citizens of this country.
So what difference do you have? In the past, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, with the help of some Democrats, some folks on the right and left didn't vote for that bill when you were governor. An approach to that has worked in the past for spending bills, where folks on the far left and far right won't vote for them, and folks in the middle do. How do you get to that up here in Washington?
I'm not sure. What I did in that case is I brought. It was horrible what happened in Parkland, but what I did was I brought a group of sheriffs and police chiefs and other law enforcement together, mental health counselors and a group of them together, and educators, and said, what are the right ideas? And then we came up with something and worked hard and we got something done. That's what ought to happen here. But when you can't have, the Democrats say, no, we're not going to have a conversation all about border security, basically. And that's what they're saying.
Last question.
Yes.
Do you believe that the buck stops with the president on shutdown?
Well, look, the buck always stops. I always thought that, if you're the president, if you're the governor, you got to do everything you can to get something done. But everybody's responsible here. Republicans, Democrats, the House, Senate, White House, everybody's responsible. And it's too bad we're in this position, but this has got to stop. The way I think about my job, as a governor, my job was how do I help get people a job, so you got to create a good economy. I think that the federal government can have a big impact on that. But the other thing is we got to keep people safe. And this is part of keeping everybody safe. And why in the world aren't we saying that to ourselves? How do we make sure that all Americans are safe? Part of it is border security. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.